and groups of affiliates. And it is also now been recorded, and the recording will be circulated. So without much ado, we'll kick off. You're all welcome to today's Coalition for Revolution webinar on some very critical issues of concern to the working masses today, and at a very auspicious fight time back. We are happy to have 4 great speakers whom I shall introduce as they are called to speak. Each panelist will have 12 minutes in the first round of discussion. The floor will then be open for your questions and comments. You can also send in questions or comments in the chat section throughout the discussion. And you could raise your hand electronically after the first round and also with the second round to make your intervention, ask your questions, make comments. In the second round of panelist discussions, which will last for 6 minutes each, they will respond to your questions and speak further on what is to be done. The floor will then be open for your interventions once again, after which we wrap up the meeting with each speaker's final statements on the webinar. Once again, we thank you all for taking time to join this important webinar on hot topical issue, which is corruption, repression, and resistance, the urgency of revolution now. For the first round, we start. And we start with Professor, he actually prefers being called comrade, and he's the professor. Professor Toye Olorode is a towering figure in the socialist movement who has inspired generations of activists since the early 1970s. He was detained 30 years ago by the Babangida regime on trumped-up charges and released only with a mass uproar by working class people and students' organizations. He has lectured at the then University of Ife, University of Abuja, and Olabisi Onabanjo University. He's a botanist academically, but he is a Renaissance man in terms of knowledge. He's a teacher far beyond the confines of classrooms. He is, as a book published in his tribute on retirement from the Obafemi Awolowo University correctly put it, people's pedagogue. It is a great honor to have you here with us today, comrade. Now to the question. Nigeria is a very rich country, but also the poverty capital of the world. Corruption is generally considered a major reason for this. Could you kindly put the systemic relationship of corruption with exploitation of the working people in perspective for us, and highlight how the people have resisted? Comrade Olorode, you're very much welcome to take the floor.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes,
hello.
Loud and clear, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thanks very much. I want to thank this webinar setup for giving us the privilege, the opportunity to deliberate on this question: corruption, exploitation, and repression. This matter has become quite topical, especially in the last few months, with all kinds of revelations about what's happening under the Buhari regime. I will get to that. I want to start by saying that generally, corruption is viewed as use of a facility for wrong purpose. Change, something is corrupted when it's changed from good to bad, from authentic to fake. In terms of governance, corruption in governance is about not using power to serve the public. subversion of public morality, use of public resources to serve private ends. Talking about governance, part of the business of corruption is reneging on electoral promises, reneging on mandates that are given people who claim that they win elections. If you take this APC thing, there was one NLC mass action in which a banner was carried up front, and APC was characterized as all promises cancelled. Now, because all kinds of promises were made, how there will be power 24 hours of the day, how all children will be fed in schools, how the naira is going to go back to 1 naira to $1, and all of that. Now, these fundamentally are, for me, corrupt practices, reneging on mandates, reneging on electoral promises, and so on and so forth. Beyond all of this, corruption is also about promotion of private aggrandizement, deification of leaderships, erection of public monuments while a leader is still alive to deify him or her, naming streets after people who have very minimal contact with people or impact on people's lives. You look at Abuja, there's no name that is not there, including all sorts of people who have really messed up our people. But all of these have material base. These are all moral categories that I've tried to whatever, but they have a material base. And it's about what made all of this possible is how society produces its needs and reproduces itself.
Sorry, I'm very sorry to break you in, but we are seeing the egghead and the ceiling more than your face. Can you
okay.
All right, thank you.
Can you see my face now?
Excellent, excellent. That's fine now. Thank you.
You know, I'm just trying to catch up with this, your technology.
I didn't want to break this, but we need to thank you.
Okay, comrade. Yeah. Okay, but so let me really say that in the last 60 years or so, the business of corruption has been a big issue in public domain. And you know, the very first coup in 1966 was, if you read Chukwuma Nzegu's broadcast, it was about corruption, the 10%ers, and so on and so forth. Then go on, the Taka story, Dabo story, and so on. In 1976, when Gowon decided to renege on handing over power to civilians, one of his 9-point program that they need to finish before handing over was to defeat corruption. So, you know, this thing has been on, and every regime claims that it's fighting corruption. Murtala's brief intervention gave people some hope that some change was going to come, but Obasanjo's intervention simply coincided with the taking over all again of our country by imperialism and international finance, and started what finally became the structural adjustment program in December 1983 and led to the Buhari coup. But you know, the intervention of, again, they talked about corruption. Even under Babangida and the entrenchment of neoliberalism, privatization, and accumulation, which is really what corruption is about. They don't tell us this. They want to fight corruption, but they don't want to fight primitive and private accumulation. All of them hid all of these element of the thing about corruption. And of course, you know, all the brutality of military regime until 1999, all of this have effects on ordinary people. They changed laws, they abrogated laws, and they used state power to entrench their policies and so on. And therefore, of course, created a lot of resistance, as you know. And this resistance, of course, created a lot of repression by the overlapping regimes of the Nigerian ruling class. Now, again, even after 1999, if you read Okonjo-Iweala's book, Reforming the Unreformable, she claimed that they tamed corruption. But we know that under Obasanjo, corruption in fact became state policy. Again, there are all kinds of responses to the Okonjo-Iweala claim about how they tamed it. It was just an illusion that they tried to, of course, again, privatization, entrenchment of neoliberal accumulation, and a lot of very massive private accumulation that we see all over the place, in the GRAs, in who bought all the public properties that were sold, and all of that. All of this were there. And even international capital, their friends abroad, with the World Bank, the IMF, at a point got so scared about the consequences of mass action against the regimes they sponsor in the peripheries. And they themselves started yelling about corruption, although, again, it's just for public consumption, because in the metropolises, like America, in many parts of Europe, it is the same noise about corruption that they make every day. The major wars are started because some people want to make money, and many people, organizations and corporations make a whole lot of money, spilling people's blood across the world and all of that. So we see the rise of neoliberalism as part of the entrenchment of corruption, both in the metropolises and in the peripheries. So this is why, in a way, the post Obasanjo, Jonathan, whatever, by the ruling class, the coalition they formed, the ruling class formed, in my view, is the strategic focus on anti-corruption, because they know that the people are worried, people are annoyed. So it was a very important issue to raise as a campaign issue. But as we said, all along, people saw that nothing really have changed, and especially in recent times with some of the revelations that whatever. So, and of course, this is also because, in spite of all the anti-corruption noise under Buhari, the foundations of accumulation, primitive and private accumulation, have not changed. So, for me, and for many people, corruption is really not, corruption is a symptom. It's not a cause. But they try to tell us that corruption is really the cause. Corruption is a symptom. If you have a country or a polity in which people are persuaded that the way to go is private accumulation, that all public property must be sold, that social services cannot be given to people unless they can pay. In that kind of polity, you cannot stop corruption, because accumulative power is political power. That's why there's nobody who become governor or minister or somebody does not become a major millionaire or billionaire. Okay, so accumulation power is entrenched by political power, because politics itself is described as the authoritative allocation of the power to make authoritative allocation of resources. So you see that all the people who had friends near the treasury or who had their hands inside the treasury became rich people, became massively rich people. And as I said, this is because this accumulative power is also expressed largely as class power. Okay, so a whole lot of what we see in terms of the debate and quarrels are really intra-class debates and quarrels in Nigeria, around which they then mobilize ordinary people to come and line up behind them every 4 years. I'm saying this because if you look at what the Buhari crowd have been doing, nothing really fundamentally changed. In fact, it was 2 years into the regime, I think in May 2017, that they finally launched what they call the Economic Recovery and Growth Program, ERGP. And if you look at ERGP, it is fundamentally an advanced form of SAP, predicated almost, in fact, entirely on neoliberal concepts of how to run economy and so on and so forth. So this comrade and my...
It's 1-2 minutes left, just to round
Hello?
up.
Yes, these are my own whatever. My understanding of this thing about corruption. The foundational issue is that the polity, the policy, economic policy, the ideology of the ruling class is about accumulation. Accumulation is achieved largely by political power. And when this power is in the hands of a ruling class that is just committed to accumulate, and Claude Ake said this long ago, 1978, that really the preoccupation of the ruling class in the peripheries is accumulation, and is responsible for a whole lot of crises, social and political crises that we witness in the peripheries. Thank you, comrade.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was not at all surprising, very enlightening. They are looking to how power informs corruption, and whilst it has increased Nigeria, it is something that is capitalist system generally. Talk of the Iraq War, and as it was talking, my mind went to Naomi Klein on disaster capitalism. So thank you very much. We now go to the second speaker, Barrister Esther Uzoma. Comrade Uzoma is a rights activist, the national coordinator of Proactive Gender Initiatives, an NGO that fights for the rights of women, children, and vulnerable persons. She is also the co-convener of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, which is an umbrella body of NGOs in Nigeria. Esther is principal partner of the Heptagon and Associates law firm, and she has pioneered dynamic methods for the enforcement of rights. Esther, you're very much welcome to take the floor, please. Kindly unmute yourself and come on. I'm trying to. Esther, yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. We can hear you loud and clear.
I can hear you, comrade.
Now we can't hear you again. We were hearing you and seeing you, then it went off. Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right. The issue at hand, I would like to suggest, personally speaking, that the era, of primitive accumulation of wealth using state powers is here upon us once again. But one critical thing that we must do, particularly as CSOs, is that we must become evangelical about rights. We must become evangelical, in our approach. What do I mean? If we have to look at what, the disciples on the day of Pentecost, they became fearless. When that fire rested on them, they became fearless. They went everywhere, they spoke, they taught. One of the critical things that we are lacking right now is knowledge, enthusiasm without knowledge. And so you find so many young people eager for a change, but the knowledge gap is enormous. Way back in the day, perhaps in the days of Prof that just spoke, people took time to learn. People also took time to educate. But we have, a very young population that is still growing, that is dependent absolutely on Western media for education. It is Hollywood that educates us. If Hollywood is not educating us, then Nollywood is misinforming us. If it is not Hollywood or Nollywood, then we are watching the drama of our elected officials on TV. So the knowledge gap, people, we cannot do more than we know. It's impossible. And so we find a young, youthful generation filled with enthusiasm that is lacking in knowledge. And so I suggest that we must go to the marketplaces, and I mean it literally, where people gather. Somebody has to teach. Somebody has to teach. So that this quest for a change, this quest for a new Nigeria, let it be knowledge-based. The Aluta we are seeing now is the Aluta based on money. The Aluta we are seeing now, particularly in the universities, is the Aluta that politicians knows we can pay for. That conviction, that core conviction that comes from knowledge is not there anymore. And so we find that we are divided, particularly even in the CSO world. Our ranks are divided. Our ranks, and because our ranks, we have not realized that truly we have just one common enemy: bad governance. So it's either a Westerner, it's either an Easterner from the south or from the north. We are just masses. All right? We are the ones who suffer. Right now, for instance, you will find that people cannot travel abroad, the air spaces are blocked and all that. But the elite, if you charter a plane, you can go anywhere you want. that knowledge gap is not, nobody is feeling it. And so you find that the youths, Nigerian youths of today, we exist, at the mercy of the highest bidder who can pay for a looter, who can rent a crowd, who wants a crowd of agitators. Who wants it? You pay for it. Rent a crowd, pioneered by the student bodies, who have taken up offices in the very Aso Rock. And so once we adopt, we must first of all imbue ourselves with knowledge, and we must take the pains to educate. It is that education that makes a man or a woman convinced. And when somebody is convinced about a cause, nothing will bring that person. So because we do not have, how can we possibly organize? What are we talking about? How would the new Nigeria come if we do not know better? Look at the charade in NDDC. And there are Robin Hoods in NDDC who are not questioning where the monies are going to. They rather take their monthly stipends because it has not occurred to us that, listen, this is all we have. You can no longer jet to India. This is it. Nigeria is it for us. And so I propagate. As people are accumulating wealth in a primitive manner, how are we accumulating knowledge? What do we know? What is coming out from where? Nothing. Just as you see a bunch of Nigerian youths angry about the system and lacking in know-how. What do I do about it? How do I approach? And so for me, the CSOs, which by the way includes that CSO, includes everybody who is not bearing arms. All right. And with the proliferation of light arms in this country right now, you just appreciate that it's a very limited space. And so knowledge. That's why I thank God. I like this series, this webinar series. The platform giving us the opportunity, but we must we must assume an evangelical approach, first of all, to imbue people with knowledge, facts about Nigeria, facts about governance, National Assembly, constituency projects, all that, so that wherever we are, from our little spaces, we begin to engage government. We engage the councillors, we get the chairman from our little domain. That is how we will bring about the change. Because believe me, when we engage in our little domains and our little spaces, of course it will not be televised. How will change? How is it? It's inconceivable. We are living in a time, we are living in a country, a predatory system that runs a predatory system. Crocodiles eating their own eggs. So without knowledge, really, we cannot bring about change. Without knowledge, we cannot, even commence the process of bringing in our own Nigeria. ASU is on strike now. How many months? So who is teaching our youths right now? Think about it. Where is the knowledge coming from of what to do? So for me, the role that the civil society must play is to ensure that knowledge, is broken down to Ishekiri language, Yoruba language, Hausa, Igbo. That knowledge about governance, so that let's demystify it based on knowledge. If we do this, perhaps we can even begin to start that process, light that fire. First for love for the country, and then for the betterment of the system. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. That was very spot on. And Esther spoke on what civil society organizations can do to address a situation where you see that the rot of corruption continues to foster, with vagabonds in power continuing to steal public funds. And she has pointed out there the critical importance of mass political education. education is central to providing leadership, a counter-hegemonic leadership, reaching out to the people, talking, explaining, and they say knowledge is power. Thank you very much for that, Esther. Our third panelist is Dr. Osage Obayuwana. Comrade Osage is a long-standing activist who has played and continues to play significant roles in building resistance to oppression in Nigeria. A radical lecturer in the 1980s Faculty of Law at the University of Benin, he resigned from the academia to protest the repressive rule of the Vice Chancellor, Grace Alile Williams. Comrade Osage was one of the pillars of the Ganifawa Emi Solidarity Organization in the early 1990s. I actually met him for the first time that 1990, and apart from being a thinker, he's a practical fighter. I remember 2 state security services operatives trying to get him with his fist. He was doing justice to their faces until they brought out a gun. Comrade Osage is a founding leader of the Campaign for Democracy, who helped build pro-democratic structures nationally and locally. He subsequently served as national chair of the National Conscience Party, NCP, and is currently president of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights. Comrade Osage, there has been a rising wave of attacks on human rights under this regime. Journalists and other citizens as well are arrested with impunity. And as we say this, I want us to remember yesterday made it exactly 1 year that a journalist, Dadia, was arrested. Till date, nobody, no member of his family has been able to reach out to him. This is just one example. You know, studies at the beginning of the year show that not less than 30 journalists were attacked or arrested, and several other citizens as well. Some just for even saying what the operatives of state considered as insulting of the president. Protesters are beaten up and peaceful demonstrations brutally dispersed. Last year, not less than 56 protesters around the Revolution Now campaign were brutalized, with a lot of them arrested for carrying out peaceful protests. But while there has been demonstrated resistance, it appears that this has not been as sustained as the pro-democracy movement of the 1990s. Why do you think this is the case? What do the social movements need to get right, in your view, to move forward and deepen resistance towards revolutionary change? Comrade Osage, you're welcome to speak to this, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Comrade. I want to say that it's a pleasure to be here. Has resistance waned? Are our people tired of fighting for their rights? I don't think so. I know that you are using the 1980s, early 90s as a reference point. We must recognize that at that particular period, we had a target: military dictatorship. Those who were not voted into office, who seized power illegally, who were doing precisely the opposite of what they proclaimed when they illegally seized power, who did not play by the rules. And at the level of decency, if a man runs a race and wins, he deserves the medal. In their arbitrariness, the military, because of the dictators, because of the self-perpetuation agenda they had, could not even abide by that. They came up with all kinds of excuses. Don't forget that ASU, the NANS, the trade unions had collaborated way before the June 12th elections. And we had seen the military dictators for what they are: impostors, pretenders. But it took the annulment of the June 12th election for the mass of our people to see what we had seen many years before. So there's a way in which that struggle for the validation of June 12 resonated with a lot of our people, not just in Yoruba land, nationwide. And of course, our organizations played the leading role in that march, whereby not only the Nigerian masses were mobilized, we mobilized international opinion. The fight on the campuses that saw people like me leaving the campus, the war that had been waged against ASU, the affiliation of ASU from the NLC, is part and parcel of the process to prevent us from playing our historical role as far as the enlightenment of our masses through various organizations that my comrade that spoke just before me talked about. So there's a way in which when the office to their barracks, they were defeated. And of course, you remember how that battle ended. The killing of MKO Abiola Abacha, that struggle in the person of Obasanjo. So there's a way in which that created some kind of a lull. I have said that the target was very clear, but at least it reminds us of what happened during the flag independence, where the white men simply withdrew and brought people who speak our language, who look like us, who go to the church and to the mosque to become our leaders. But the system remained. So what I'm trying to say is that the issues appear to be wider now. We have gone through over 20 years of so-called democracy, and yet we are not getting the dividends. We are not getting the benefits of democracy. So quite honestly, the fact that those who wear civilian clothing are occupying offices now, who have in fact perfected the act of corruption of our people, mostly during the electionary period, has gone a great length in confusing a lot of people, in demobilizing them, in adopting the wait and see attitude. But then the problems remain. So we are dealing with a new type of dictatorship of the minority for the interest of the minority. And this is the reason why we have this corruption and repression. Certainly our people are resisting in their little ways. But you will agree with me that the storms are gathering now. So when you talk about, criticize and go to jail, it is because once again they feel that the system is threatened, they are being more fully exposed. All the subterfuge hiding behind religion and ethnicity are being broken down. And you can imagine a situation where they said, if you share your opinion that is critical of office holders, not just at the level of Mr. President, but even at the level of governors, if you use the internet, if you use WhatsApp to circulate a critical view, they term that a cybercrime, for which people have been sent to jail under circumstances where even where the few courageous judges see through this scheme and grant bail, they still refuse to comply. You recall how long it took before the SSS will comply with the orders made by court concerning our comrade Omoyele Sowore. Journalists who were, even lawyers, we are even talking about soldiers who criticize the chief of army staff for the poor job he's doing as far as security is concerned, and people like that are handed to jail, which suggests that really not much has changed. But the point is to appreciate that we're not just talking about civil and political rights. economic rights, social rights, cultural rights, the right to a job, the right to health care on the basis of need and not ability to pay, the right to housing, the right to education, the right to dignity. So even after all these years, in this era of COVID-19, many of our people do not have running water, not to talk about light. Purchase of soap on a regular basis to wash clothes and to wash their persons are challenging to quite a number of people. Minimum wage for the few that are employed, till date, payment of it is still not given effect to by a lot of states. So, you know, it's a natural phenomenon. Even the cow, when the cow is subject to a lot of fleas and ticks, it will stamp his foot, it will use his tail to drive away the flies. So I'm trying to say that resistance to this oppression, which I have said is beyond civil and political rights, but also economic rights, especially political rights, is a natural phenomenon. So it will not be entirely accurate to say that our people are not fighting back in their different ways. But I think the urgency of the situation is that from what is coming out of Nigeria presently, if the present ruling class has 1,000 years, these kinds of fundamental changes that our people have fought for historically will never come. So the issue, as had been canvassed, is that victims cannot continue to wait. The changes are overdue, and nobody else is going to bring about these changes other than the victims.
Exactly.
So yes, to adopt the call it the evangelical approach, because we also have to talk about the content of the education. Actually, as we say, he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. So we don't really need to remind people of what they go through, but perhaps it is to encourage them to appreciate that no slavery would not end on the goodwill of the slave masters. It is the victims that must organize, because what we are dealing with is self-liberation. Somebody talked about the NDDC, which has its own peculiarities. It was supposed to have been a program designed to address the mess that Niger Delta has been turned into. And then after how many years, see what has happened, you know? So NDDC is a product of a system. There's a system that generates corruption, and that system is to be located in the scheme whereby minority seizes the wealth collectively created by the majority. And so the contract system is an incident of that. Overpriced contracts that are not intended to be performed is inherent in the system that is in place, the capitalist system that is in place in Nigeria today. So the issues have to be put squarely on our agenda, that we can have a Nigeria where in every part of Nigeria right now, you see grown-up women who have psychiatric challenges walking around stark naked on our streets. We have people sleeping on the streets simply because they cannot afford to pay rent. How do you expect a family, the breadwinner of which is old salaries on end, how do they survive? And so those who profit from the system right now are those who are using repression to sustain that system, to keep it going. And then they want the rest of us to wait that eventually the trickle-down theory, will bring succor to the majority of our people. That is never going to come. So the point is that it is the victims that must say enough is enough. Yes, we are celebrating the first year anniversary of Revolution Now. Yes. Revolution Now, because this changes to bring about a system that is different. It's overdue. And so the urgency of it is one that must be propagated, even evangelically. What was witnessed in the NDDC revelation exists in all spheres. It's the product of a system. And unless that system is addressed, then certainly there's no succor that is going to come. NDDC, you can even see the 774,000 jobs that the Minister for Labor, proposed, and how the National Assembly sought to hijack that project. In this mess that COVID-19 has brought about, you know that they are implementing the increase in the value-added tax. Petroleum price has been increased, electricity tariffs have been increased, and for the first time in our history, we are talking about taxes on rent paid by tenants. So the government has articulated what they call economic sustainability plan, which does not address these fundamental issues. How can the majority appropriate and get the benefit of the wealth that is produced, in this country? That is the fundamental issue, and that is the issue we have, to pose before our people. So it's not really about the elections, because there are people who at this particular moment who are trying to focus our attention on, oh, should the next president come from the eastern part of the country, or they are going to abandon the rotational presidency. Where does the next president come from? Is it to Konjo Iweala, Peter Obi, or El Rufai? The issue is, what system must we have in this country? What is the role of the people in bringing about that system? Who are the people in Nigeria who ought to bring about that system? We do know that there is the right to self-defense and the defense of one's interest. It appears as if the majority needs to be prodded to appreciate that they do have this right to protect their interests and to defend their rights. And these changes cannot be brought about other than through massive actions. So victims nationwide need to be organized, and in fact to organize themselves, and to reach out across religious and ethnic divides, to talk about these issues and not remain silent, and above all, to act and insist that these changes will stand for the benefit of the masses of our people, which ultimately is the real democracy in the interest of the majority of our people, which is long overdue, that the time is now for us to have this systemic change. I want to use this occasion to appreciate the initiative of ASCAP, because we appreciate that the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that have come with it have fully exposed the irresponsible nature of the ruling class in Nigeria. They are talking about going back to school without assuring how many of our schools have running water. So the way ASCAP is going about persistently canvassing these issues within civil society organizations, amongst labor organizations, amongst youth organizations, amongst those we now call workers in the informal sector, the traders, the farmers, the artisans, to appreciate the common fate that awaits them and the obligation to self that they are the ones who must do something about it, and no better time than now. I think that is the issue that confronts us, and I'm glad for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Osagi. That was very insightful. And you did raise quite a number of things. I won't attempt to summarize them, just to point out two or three key things. One, that when talking of rights, I mean, the issue of social and economic rights, with the spate of demolitions, the right to housing is being violated with impunity. I mean, you spoke about water. Less than 40%, about 40% of Nigerians don't have access to potable water. And a large number of even those that have access to it, they have to pay for it through Merua and stuffs like that. And I would say also health, despite the fact that Section 2 of the Constitution guarantees it, this is not justiciable. A lot of people pay through their noses for that. But, and as a bridge to the next discussant, what I so much appreciate even more than anything there that you pointed out had to be that it's not people are resisting, because this is a debate that has taken place in several webinars on Facebook that, especially with regards to students, that there's no more activism, but not only students generally. It's that the urgency might now seem different from what was in the 80s, 90s for several reasons, including ideological reasons. I mean, people are not, the idea of that there's no alternative, and the need for radical and revolutionary forces to do more of, as you put it, evangelism, taking revolutionary ideas, in language. And when I say language, in construction of language that resonates with the working masses and the youth. And the fact that, look, people are resisting. The urgency might not seem so sharp because the difference between the military and the civilian, which are two sides of the same ruling class coin, is like the difference between an armed robber and the 419. Because the armed robber carries gun, it's so like that in your face. But the 419 can even finish people's lives much more finishable, pata kind of way. So the thing is, just like what Wahab Goodluck was saying, that after the military, it should be the workers. I mean, now we have seen the total bankruptcy of all sections of the ruling class. And the time for revolution now, I mean, is now. The urgency has, to be reinforced, not just for regime change, but indeed for system change. And that is also where the words of Chima Ubani comes to play, where he said, mass resistance is a vehicle, regime change is a goal, system change is a goal. I'm not sure if I get that quote right, but the essence is that with mass resistance, when we call for regime change, we need much more than regime change. The goal is system change. And with that now, we come to the final panelist, Comrade Omoyele Sowore. Sowore has been one of the most consummate activists from the students' movement of the anti-military dictatorship struggle. He was president of the University of Lagos Students' Union, also from October 1992 to February 1994, and then also chair of the caretaker committee till October 94 based on attacks against him, during which he was also chairperson of the Lagos State Joint Campuses Committee, JCC of NANS. In 1997, he emerged as pioneering national coordinator of the Congress of Progressive Youth, COPY. And you might want to remember then the May Day demonstrations that led to people like Olaoni and Bola Ige being arrested as prisoners of war by the then military administrator of Oyo State. It was COPY under Sowore that mobilized this mass action. He established Sahara Reporters in 2006, trailblazing a radical genre of citizen journalism. He is convener of the Take It Back movement and national chair of the African Action Congress. Comrade Yele, for many activists, resistance is seen as part of the revolutionary process, which is seen as a long-term project. But with the launch of the Revolution Now campaign last year, protests coming up on Wednesday, Hashtag August 5th protest. You and other leaders of the Coalition for Revolution seem to stress the urgency and immediacy of revolution. Why? Comrade Ele, it's a pleasure to have you speak to this. Comrade Shore? He did say he would be on the field, but I think I saw him here. So, hello? I'm trying to unmute. Comrade Shaw, you could unmute yourself as well. Hello? Just a minute. Unmute. Comrade Shaw, are you there? I can't seem to be able to unmute him. You'll have to unmute yourself, Shore. I can see you are there, but we can't see you or hear you. Well, probably it's the vagaries of it because it's been on the field. Whilst we wait.
All right.
Okay. Hello? No. While we wait for Shore to come and join, I'm also trying to unmute him. There were a few questions that arose in relation to the earlier three speakers. There was one, from Tokumbo Ke, who asked if the class content of, well, a comment, but also sort of a question where he pointed out, I mean, how do we look at corruption, but does corruption have a class content between those that privatize state resources, which is what corruption actually is, and those at the bottom of society that use corrupt practices to survive? I think that would be for Professor Olorude, whom he also saluted and saying you never lose your passionate presentation and an articulate manner. So, Prof, would you want to respond to that question from Tokumbo? There are also a few other questions.
Yes, comrade. You see, actually, there are various versions of that question. I think Mag family, they also on this raise the question. Not only people in power are corrupt. There is also this general question about how students have become bankrupt and all of that. Well, these are observations that are true on the surface. Look, there are countries, at least today, where you don't have robbers. You know, I knew that until the collapse of the Soviet Union, there were no armed robbers. There are no, when we were young, there were no lunatics roaming the streets. You don't want to where I live.
8 to 8 or 8 to 8 or 8 to 10. Okay, that's the only upgrade we have, and they're bringing it again.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
You are hearing me. I mean, so.
I think it's because it's Michael on night most of the week next week.
You see, there are various policies and various policies of the ruling class, you know. In a society where the ruling class decides to simply sit on everybody and take the resources of society. You know, ordinary people won't just sit around and say, well, it's okay. There will be all kinds of responses. Some people will resist. Some people will become praise singers of the people who are sitting on society. Some people will become their agents. The policemen that brutalize ordinary people, many of them live in slums. Their children are in rags and all of that. And so we need to understand all of this, that what the less powerful people in society do is generally a reflection of the power and repression that the ruling classes impose on society. If you take the student movement didn't just become what it was in the 70s and 80s. There was a direct link between the radical academics in the universities and the labor movement. NAS became part and parcel of the mobilizational processes of NLC. The Nigerian academics became part and parcel. In fact, we joined NLC around 1982 or so. And we were so effective that in 1986, the Babangida people needed to remove us from NLC. I mean, so all of these things are, if we don't build capacity in our universities for a different kind of university, we will not be able to return to the point where young people, students played the role that they played in the 80s and 90s. So I think beyond the question of evangelism that Esther raised, knowledge and organization, because I mean, as Comrade Obayuwana said, there was organization that was able to look ahead, look back. Look at the circumstances which we are working on it is always quite tempting for victims to be okay. I mean, look, is matter and good. Have some people.
We are losing your feed, Prof. Are you still there? Hello? Hi, comrades. Well, we'll get Prof back. I think he's also having some technical problems. And also, we seem to have lost Shore. I'll try to briefly fill in the gap and also make questions as we then move to the second round. A bit quickly, I'm talking here as a co-convener of the Coalition for Revolution on why revolution now last year, why are we commemorating it. To a great extent, Dr. Sagi Obayuwana hit the nail on the head when he spoke about that, look, now we have gone beyond, I mean, the shift from the military to the civilian itself was a major shift. It was a transition, but it was a transition from one set of oppressors and exploiters to the other. I think nothing demonstrates that as sharply as the fact that the two longest serving heads of states, even under the Republic, are both people that have served as military heads of states, which goes to show that the more things appear to have changed, the more they remain the same in the hands of the same class. And concretely speaking, when we talk of revolution now, it's about the urgency and immediacy of it. In filling the gap, what I want to talk to in that respect there has been the argument of that you don't decree revolution into being. Revolution is a long-term thing. I mean, there are even some revolutionaries that are like, look, we need a revolution, yes, but it must be a socialist revolution. But the fact of the matter is this: the revolution indeed is a process. Well, social revolution is not a one-off revolution. A social revolution is, it emerges from series of political revolutions. By this, what do we mean? Every revolution entails, contestations, change of power. A social revolution entails the shift of power from one class to another. Now, the working class, the masses, who alone represents the only consistently revolutionary class, we exist within a society that, like every other society, the dominant ideas are the ideas of the dominant classes. Even whilst workers will fight for reforms, for improved wages, for better workplace safety and all that, more often than not, we're fighting for reforms because, the society, the capitalist system which shapes this society, it does not appear as clearly to us all as something that can be overthrown once and for all. And you see it right from cradle to the grave in our schools, through advertisement, through the television and all that. The idea is given, sometimes subtly, sometimes much more explicitly, by ideologues, including traditional intellectuals representing the status quo, that capitalism has always been, is, and will forever be. But that is not true. Capitalism has existed for less than 500 years, and even as matured capitalism for barely 200 years out of tens of thousands of years of human existence. But the fact of the matter, and it is also important in having this in perspective, when we talk of system change in Nigeria, we cannot just talk of system change in Nigeria. Part of what the COVID pandemic has shown is the interconnectedness of the world. And capitalism operates and can operate only as an international system. The working class movement is an international movement. So a social revolution bringing about the total breakage of the chains of exploitation that hold the working masses down would be won as an international socialist revolution, entailing series of, you had and it is not even all political revolutions that will immediately be successful, but we learn even from revolutions that are not successful. So, because what revolution does is not just about winning power from the oppressor, it's also that the working masses, those fighting to seize power, we learn from the process of revolution. That is to say, the ideological blinkers that the bourgeoisie, that the capitalists, that the bosses, that the employers put on our faces under periods of normalcy, we learn to tear them apart, and that is the essence of it. That is part of why, even in fighting against how they are handling the pandemic, which shows not just the interconnectedness of the world, but the interconnectedness of health with economy and with the environment. We should be clear, what are the alternatives? Without overthrowing capitalism, in fact, the world itself is in danger of extinction. We have witnessed not just climate change now, but climate and ecological crisis. Climate and ecological crisis in which, as a result of production based on profit and not needs, the world keeps getting nearer and nearer to explosion. The world keeps getting nearer and nearer to the precipice. So we need to change this system. And here in Nigeria, what that means is mobilizing to kick out this, because Nigeria is a wealthy country, but with the largest number of poor people in the world. Why? Because the 1%, the Dangote, what Dangote earns one day is 8,000 times what an average worker earns every year, not every day. What Dangote earns one day is 8,000 times more than what an average Nigerian worker gets in a whole year, according to Oxfam. 5 of the richest persons in Nigeria, all of them billionaires, of course, their wealth is enough to totally eradicate poverty from Nigeria, which has the largest number of poor people in the world. And that's why we're saying this cannot wait. We are saying we ourselves are the ones that can emancipate ourselves, that can liberate ourselves, that can break that chains. And it has to be now. We need justice now. We need emancipation now. We need revolution now. And it is we that can make it to remake Nigeria, to remake the world. So that is the essence of it in a few words. There have been a number of other we still don't have Shore yet. I'm trying to see, Prof, if you're back to, you could still round up on that question. And there's also a question, I think it was from Yekini, that can we consider what is happening in the NDDC as corruption? I mean, without much ado, that can be categorically answered as yes, corruption in high places. We also have, I must acknowledge the solidarity message from Comrade Ramsey of ASIS M. Thank you very much. He salutes CORE on the 1-year anniversary of the revolution now. You're also very much welcome to make contributions. Then a question from Sahid Husseini, based on Comrade Esther Uzoma's presentation. Comrade Esther, this goes to you. Based on Comrade Esther Uzoma's presentation, are there already examples?
Moderator, sorry to cut you short. Moderator, you have a message. Can you please take it?
Okay, I will. I would read this question, and Esther, while she's taking it, I could then look at that. Based on Comrade Esther Uzoma's presentation, are there already examples in Nigeria's present or history of the evangelical approach to knowledge and consciousness raising in the marketplace, which Comrade Esther spoke about? How can we learn from and multiply existing examples? Comrade Esther, are you there, please?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, could you kindly respond to that? Thank you.
Well, the examples of evangelical approach, particularly to knowledge, are very, very few. For instance, what we do, we literally go to gardens on Saturdays and provoke conversation about Nigeria, just with total strangers. In provoking such conversations, we now endeavor, to communicate and impact knowledge. We go to newspaper stands where the artisans gather, the keke, who somehow find time to browse through the daily. We go to newspaper stands. And so I propose that this be multiplied. We are doing it now, in that slow key, but it can be multiplied. Nigerians, particularly in Abuja, you see where they gather in clusters. That is a classic example of how to impact knowledge. Like I said before, enthusiasm without knowledge cannot work. I am angry, dollar is falling. It will just be that, vituperations of an angry person. So what next? So that needs to be taught. Then certain persons who have also taken the evangelical approach have paid the price for it. People like Shaware, all right? Shaware, it was on the day of Pentecost that he marched the streets of Abuja, calling on, people who have sympathy for his cause, and look at the price we're paying. But we must, let us replicate this model wherever we are. Just replicate it. Then if knowledge is spread, then we can provoke conviction. We can there has to be a renaissance of love for Nigeria. Love, renaissance, patriotism, faith in Nigeria. Imagine what provokes a politician to steal Nigerians' money and go to Togo to establish a university. Because they don't believe. And so this knowledge is, we must again make people believe. And so that through that, we can bring about the change that Nigeria we want. Thank you.
Yes, okay. All right. Esther,
Yes,
sorry.
please.
There was okay, now first my are you true?
Yes, I'm done.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to troubleshoot. It seems because there were a couple of persons I tried to mute, it didn't work out, so I removed one of such. It seems whilst doing that, I might have, because the name also started with an S, inadvertently had removed Shore. So whilst I try to add him back, I will take the second round of questions. When Shore comes, he will take his first round. So we start with there are no raised hands, otherwise we would have asked for people. I saw 2 raised hands before, but they were down. But I'll now call on Prof. We have said a lot about corruption. What is to be done? What is to be done?
I want to add to some of the things that Comrade Esther said. You see, the evangelism thing, well, it's okay, but you know, a lot of knowledge can also be garnered from concrete struggles of people. And our people in groups are carrying out defense of themselves and organizations in different ways where we are. So the place to really do evangelism is where people are engaged in defending themselves. So if we are creative and we are attentive, teachers are defending themselves, people who are not paid are defending themselves, pensioners are defending themselves, mothers who have children that can't reach hospital are defending themselves in groups. That is the place to go and do our evangelism, because if we then intervene definitively, make available some of the facility that we have in terms of knowledge, in terms of people we know, they are people that will become part of our evangelical process. So I'm just raising this, that, you know, going to a park is okay, but you know, a lot of people just forget. It's a debate, and it's like some of these social media debate. People just want to say something and go. So I'm saying that along with, I mean, we should ground these things in people's organizations. And if we have organizations like CORE, like ASCAP, and so on, if we are engaged with, say, nurses or pensioners or something, and we meet people who say, look, I want to do something about the situation like you guys are doing. And then you say, okay, we have this organization called CORE. Will you like to be part of it? We have this organization called ASCAP. Will you like to be part of it? Or CDHR, do you like to be part of it? That is the way to build, comrade. That's what I want to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Comrade Osage, what is to be done? What's in the light of where we are now and fighting for our rights and against repression?
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed the sharing of views so far. As I was listening to my comrades, I was reminded of an allegory. It's like a traditional saying in Benin, where I come from. Those days, people cook in open space behind the house, and they use stones to wedge the pot. And some crazy goat comes and knocks over the pot of soup that everybody is waiting to have dinner with. The saying, if you permit me, is that the goat that throws away the collective soup is beaten collectively. That's That's what it means. So what we have in Nigeria is that a collective pot of soup, has been cooked or is being cooked, and a few goats out of recklessness are persistently knocking over that pot of soup. So I'm just using this to say that the reprisal that the goats should face should be collective. I salute Prof, our teacher, for the organizational dimension that he brought to the issue of evangelism. I also want to say that as individual comrades, we should internalize the virtues that our call for a system change embodies. We cannot afford to be hypocrites. We cannot say one thing and be doing another. We live within communities. We live with our children and with our spouses. If we are calling for the extension of all-round human rights to all members of the human family, then that charity must begin from ourselves. So we are supposed to live these ideals when we are identifying with the lowliest in our midst. We can't afford to show examples that are not in line with that. We appreciate that it's a process, but we can never be tired of playing our role in that process. I still remember the single mother, I think in Ilesha, that saw our comrades during about a year ago, during the revolutionary march.
I've finally gotten it. Oh, my quick, we are learning by doing. So, sorry. Sorry.
So I'm just saying, comrade, that by whatever we do or fail to do, we are sending a message. And so if you are talking about evangelization, consistency is a requirement.
Sorry, I was doing some troubleshooting and didn't realize I hadn't muted.
Okay.
Comrade Esther, you had responded to a specific question from Husseini, but would you also want to talk on what is to be done concretely on evangelizing, on what CSOs can do? Then after that, I think by then show would have come in. We had the first one. Then I already noted 3 raised hands for questions. Shola, Lillian, and Kayo, they will come to you, and also Tokumbo. So, Esther, any perspective on what is to be done concretely in taking forward the propositions you raised of radical evangelism?
Yes, you see, I think, frankly, I think it's time for women, to take the lead in this new phase, of events. Believe me, I feel very strongly. I recall historically, Nigeria, women are of a very strong breed. We had a warrior queen, Amina of Zaza, who was conquering territories, and she ran an expansionist agenda. Look at the About Women riot. Suddenly, our women somehow, we are now occupied with Brazilian hair, Chinese braids, and I think it is time, the new phase of events, the Nigerian woman concretely must take the lead, both in this evangelism, the Pentecostal approach that is knowledge-based and knowledge-driven. We have to, in that concrete terms, therefore, what are we doing now that's, teaching? I emphasize so much on that because I know how much I learned from my teachers. I want to be talk about public libraries because we don't have it anymore. And so that's teaching. Yes, that somebody, we must take that lead. There has to be a feminine approach to this idea of, a revolution. We must bring that to fore. So because it's easy to relate with our children, with our sons who want to be heroes, with our husbands, with our brothers, so that it is not all by force. That's all that we can do it better. So for me, that is one of the a concrete thing, and it's also a new approach. It's also a new approach that must be brought to bear. My take.
I agree with also the issue of women, but I think it will also show, because there are right-wing women, there are also left-wing women, just as with men. I'll give an example. We try to raise our children to also be, even though they have to choose their path, to be feminist amongst other things. So my daughter came home, I was like, look, she's routing for Marine Le Pen because she's a woman. I had to sit her down, the eldest daughter, that look, yes, she's a woman, and we said, what a man can do, a woman can do too, but this woman is a fascist. Supporting her goes against the fundamental perspective on the basis of which a radical feminism rests. So I think we should raise men and women, like I think it was Langston Hughes that said something about that. It's easier to raise strong boys than reset broken men. So we should raise from childhood, women and men, girls and boys, on the right, on the left ideas, not the right idea. So I think the angle, the troubleshooting had been done to get back in show that was brought out. But I think on his side now, we're also waiting for him to come. We'll take some of the questions now, and I will start from Lillian Sampson, followed by Kayode Olanrewaju. Lillian Sampson, followed by Kayode Olanrewaju. Please, 3 minutes max thereabout for your questions or comments. Lillian, can you unmute yourself and speak, please? I've unmuted you, Lillian. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
Good afternoon, great minds. My name is Samson Lillian. This is my question. I haven't been able to evangelize and also to educate people about the current situation of Nigeria after exposing them. Then what next can we do actually to be able to bring ourselves out of this current problem we are having, out of the bad leadership and everything? After evangelism, what's next? What could be the next step we can take to come out of the problem we are having? That's my question.
Thank you. We'll take rounds of 3 questions. Then the speakers can respond. So we now have Kayode Olanrewaju, followed by Shola Olorunfemi. Then the next round will take Tokunbo, Gbenga, and Felix. Kayode Olanrewaju, followed by Shola Olorunfemi.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate this platform so much. Okay, so I want to quickly ask about what Comrade Esther Uzoma talked about. She talked about knowledge, which is very critical. But we must also agree that for us to effect this change, under the platform of revolution now, we need a lot of young people with the right knowledge. And currently, we still have young people, the largest number of young people with some knowledge which is wrong. All right, that is why they would never join this Revolution Now platform. So, and there's this saying, there's this quote that there is no knowledge that has no power. So their own wrong knowledge also has also empowered them to resist what we are doing. Okay, so my question is, how can we get these people, I mean, these other people with the wrong knowledge, how can we quickly get them to see the same vision or to imbibe the same vision which we also all believe in to effect the change we want in this country? So that's my question.
The last question for this round will be Shola Olorunfemi. Shola Olorunfemi. Shola? Hello? If he's not there, we could have, Shola, are you there? Could we have Tokumbo okay? Tokumbo,
yeah, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Right, I just have a comment to make, and I'd like to thank you, Baba Aye, and the other comrades for, putting this on. If I could also say that this is simply, it's not a Nigerian problem. This is a global, problem. I mean, I've lived in England for 30 years, and the same kind of challenges, that people are facing in Nigeria are the same challenges we are facing here, in terms of unemployment, in terms of the lack of housing, coupled with the fact that, COVID-19 didn't drop from the sky. COVID-19 is a problem of the capitalist system and its terrible effect, on the environment, where everything is treated as a commodity for sale and a commodity, to be just thrust aside, all in the name, of profit. I'd also like to thank Prof. Oloyede. I haven't seen him for about 30 years, but himself and Comrade Shegun Oshoba, who happened to be my MA supervisor in Ife. I'd like to let them know how much they transformed, my life. In terms of getting me to think about the issues critically, and then getting, involved in the processes that we need, to get involved with, to make this world a better place. So I'd like to thank all of you. Thank you very much.
Comrade Babaye, the first speaker is still waiting.
On that's what I've been troubleshooting on, and by now you should be getting on, please. Thanks for joining, but that's what I've been doing between the questions. So,
okay then.
Comrade Oluride, Comrade Esther, and Comrade Osage, the questions could be taken now. That's the first three questions, and of course, Stokes was a very profound comment. In a sense, he spoke on behalf of an entire series of generations of the debt we owe to our teachers that we are teaching what they were not paid to teach, as Obasanjo once said. So some of the key questions, sorry, as you noted, I was troubleshooting while doing that, and I think we're making progress there. One, what is to be done after the evangelization? And then, yeah, the second one, I couldn't quite pick it, but please kindly respond to the question, starting with Esther on the issue of what is to be done after the evangelization, then Comrade Olorode and Comrade Osagi. And sorry for the slight bit of technical problems, which is now under control. Thank you. So, comrades, let's get started. Comrade Esther?
All right. After evangelism, The next thing is that you expect that people will be born again. Hello. And then if they are born again, you drag them to be filled with the Holy Spirit. Let them speak in new tongues. That's when they start speaking the gospel of that we are speaking now. But putting it in concrete terms, really, they get involved with the process. They get involved. How do we, for instance, right now, if a Nigerian youth wants to get involved, Sure got about 33,000 votes. Imagine when the teeming population of Nigerian youths actually take the pains, to get a PVC, actually take the pains to stand and vote, actually take the pains to stand and also watch the vote. Overvoting, for instance, occurs because the people who should be watching are not watching. How can we register 10 people in a polling unit and turn out 1,000 votes because people are not watching? And so if the Nigerian votes, after that evangelism, they engage, become engaged and with governance, with the process of governance, starting with politics, go get a PVC. All right? The season will soon be upon us. What do? Whoever is saying anything, telling you about, when Prof is opening salvo, he said that, listen, corruption is also not keeping to political promises. You engage. And then when you participate, that's how you participate, and then you watch the process. Join hands with people like you. What I'm talking about is that you must not be on a platform, just in that your local area, in that your PU. That is how, otherwise, it won't bring about a nation that we all want for our children. So I propose that after that, you engage with the process, get involved, get a PVC, elect people from that let comrades emerge as political, as flag bearers, and then let them become, will come into offices so that we can expect better. How dare we expect a change when we keep doing the same thing over and over again? So I so submit.
Thank you very much. I agree totally on the importance of electoral of the electoral politics and all that. But also we should have in mind what Lucy Parson said, that if through elections we can vote away the power of the ruling class, they will make elections illegal, and because we have lost a lot of comrades who say they want to entrism, and then you want to try to catch a monkey and you act like a monkey, and then you end up just like the monkey, so it's also something I think to be handled with care, because the issue of changing the system is a broad one. And so, well, Comrade Osage, what is to be done in your view once again?
Well, beyond education, we expect our people to act, give voice to the conviction we have attained. We know that historically, the holding of protest marches and rallies constitutes an extension of our freedom of speech. If we work hard enough and we get enough persons to share our vision and to see how that vision is in their own, as they say, enlightened self-interest, we can take measured steps to affirm those positions. If we take out 200 neighbors in our community, all with slogans that we have collectively accepted, that no more oppression, and that our collectively produced wealth must no longer be privately appropriated. We are demanding an equitable distribution of the wealth of this country to meet the fundamental needs of the lowliest and the majority of our people. If we persist in those demands, and not only just talking about it through text messages and WhatsApp chats, we hit the streets. The law has told us that we have such rights, and the police has no right to prevent us from adopting those forms of speech. It's still going to be contributory to greater mobilization of our people. It will get to a stage where we will say, look, hold everything else until this is realized. And then we are talking about revolution. So I agree with you that we don't need to imagine that our options are limited to electoral contests that come once in 4 years. If we are really persuaded that enough is enough and that these fundamental changes are realizable and the majority is prepared to insist on it, everything else can wait until that is realized. I think that is when we'll be talking about the revolution. As it is right now, for instance, virtually the federal government and the different states, they have reviewed downwards the monies they claim they want to spend in this 2020 budget year. In that process, there was no input by the Nigerian Labour Congress and the civil society organizations. That is an issue that can be taken up squarely. That the budget making process is priority setting. And so, the few persons who occupy public office cannot continue to put our money to use in a manner that creates business opportunities for themselves. And we say no to that. If they agree that sovereignty belongs to the people, we must exercise the power of sovereignty to insist on what we want. And they have an obligation to yield to that. Right now, the oil blocks are being advertised for sale. How is this going to conduce to the need for equitable distribution of the wealth of this country? It will not. So not only do we have the right to say no to that, we can also come together on the streets to insist that we don't want this policy. So the second question was every education, every enlightenment carries some measure of force. Well, we have the people's pedagogue with us, fortunately, on this platform today. The vision that we push must accord with the best interests of the recipient. Now, in the process of doing that, yes, we will contend with those who say, oh, don't worry about this life, just wait for the world to come before you can get your goodies. In the contestation of ideas, we also have an obligation to say that, you know, that is not in the best interest of the victims of the system right now. There are no contradictions between enjoying your rights here and whatever happens, you know, in the life to come. So that contestation is a continuing one. But we do have the conviction that the vision we espouse of the new Nigeria, which you say is possible, is one that accords with the best interests of the majority of our people. And we have a duty to, just like we said earlier, share our views with them, not to be distracted by issues about ethnicity and religion, and support your oppressors if he speaks your language and all of that. So it's a struggle.
Thank you very much, Comrade. Comrade Olorede, would you want to chip in something there before we call the next set of questions, please?
So just a little whatever. This thing about knowledge. See, knowledge is best acquired in action when you are doing something. What the knowledge you get from acting, trying to change things, trying to change your own situation, is more permanent than knowledge that people are just transmitting by preaching to you. And that is why I was saying that, well, look, once we link up with people in the process of struggle, there will be a lot of things that will arise from the struggle for people to learn. And incidentally, gaining knowledge is a two-way thing. Somehow, we activists think that we have all the answers. We don't. We must meet people where they are. Because if we interact with them very intensely through struggle, we would have an idea of why they believe in what they believe and don't believe in what they don't believe. In the process of struggle, we then pose our own ideas. We test it. We get together, we test our own idea. And in the process, we see let me give an anecdote. Sometime in the 70s or early 80s, we were engaged with a small group in Ife, the Cleaners Union. We had a huge rally, and they were not paid. After working they are usually daily paid. They were not paid for like 10 days. So, meager daily wage, So in this big rally at the sports center, somebody then suggested that we should go to the Oni to complain to him. And somebody said from our own, radical perspective that, look, the traditional rulers are also part of the ruling class. He won't listen. So somebody said, look, let us learn. Let us send a delegation to the palace to complain that the contractor didn't pay us. So we sent a delegation to the palace. When they got there, they met another delegation from another company, a wood company, that came to complain to the Oni. That wood company is owned by a relative of the Oni. And Oni was trying to persuade them that they should be patient. That after all, when this guy had money, he was paying them. Our own people could not present their own case because they knew the answer. So they came back and reported to us. What would have taken us long lectures about how traditional rulers are part of the ruling class and they have the same class interests, the cleaners learned in just a minute of that experience. This is what I'm saying. If we engage in action with people, we can even decide that once in a year, with such people, we will have an education week in which we can then organize formal lectures, formal teachings, answers with such people. So the struggle ahead of us is not something that is going to end, as Baba said. Even when we win an election, let us say we win, the Revolutionary Party wins an election. To think that will be the end of the show, then it's an illusion. It's not going to end. It's a perpetual process of learning from people, teaching them, engaging in the defense of themselves that they are doing. That is what that will be not. We won't achieve much if we are not engaged in concrete action with our people on issues that affect their lives, affect them, affect their children, and so on. So we should become part of their struggle. We will teach them more, we will learn more from them, they will learn more from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the people's pedagogue. Well, what we'll do now is we'll take the 5 hands we have up, and I want to express a profound appreciation that despite the time, we've overshot time a great deal, but we still, now we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll take this. And my apologies, we're trying to troubleshoot regarding bringing show back. But worst case scenario, I mean, if we can't, this would have been very important, especially with the action for the 5th. But definitely there'll be. I'm really very sorry about the mix-up there. But we'll take the hands raised now. Benga Komolafe will be followed by Felix Oludari. Benga Komolafe, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Comrade Aye. I want to appreciate the very powerful panel we have in the house today and the very rich discussion we have had. And I want to say that I've also found very interesting some of the issues raised around the necessity for education, mobilization, and organization. The issue raised by Comrade Esther actually dwells at length about the need for educating poor working people about the world around them and the dynamics of their own oppression. This is very, very important. But it's also very important, as Prof. Stressed, that this should take place within the framework of an organization so that it will be possible within the framework of an organization to actually direct people, assist people, and be part of the people to take specific actions to defend their own interests. And I must say that this is what my organization actually does. We work with traders, we work with market women, street vendors, mechanics, and so on and so forth on a day-to-day basis. And of course, we have no option than to just keep helping to solve problems, because there are always issues about extortion. There are always, when you talk about repression and oppression, these people, this class of people live it on a daily basis. For them, it's not just grammar. And if you work with them, the challenge always is about what can you also do to help redress certain situations. And like Prof pointed out, that process is profoundly informing and enlightening for everybody, both for us who are trying to organize and those are the mass of our working people that we are trying to organize. So all-round education for all of us. So they get to understand in very clear terms that there are specific class interests and that people who become governors, who become House of Assembly members and so on and so forth, have specific class interests. And they also have a lot of class solidarity, so that such that when a mechanic village, for instance, is stolen by a member of the ruling elite and you run to the governor by a petition, or you even do a protest of the House of Assembly, they have come to realize that because that member of the ruling elite, have a meeting point with the people you are running to, you don't achieve anything. And invariably, you have to do more than the traditional petition writing and so on and so forth. Even when we go to court, sometimes also, even at that level, the fivvy hand of the ruling elite even jeopardize the claim of a rule of law and all of that. So it is important that the process of trying to mobilize, educate our people must be embedded within an organizational framework. But then it can also be frustrating when people bring issues day in, day out, and there are no solution. So there must be another kind of action. And that's where people must draw that's where people begin to draw political lessons. that as long as there is a system that is essentially predatory, because it seeks to dispossess people. We did a field work and we discovered that over 100 markets, mechanic villages, sawmills, working clusters in the informal sector, public spaces allotted by a Mokiani governor in the past have been taken over in Lagos State by property classes in a gentrification process. And these people are actually taking over this place with stolen state resources, and they are now building plazas on these stolen public properties. Now, it is becoming increasingly clear to our people that you cannot continue to engage these people by placating them, begging them, going to court or whatever. There must be political, there must be effort geared towards political organizing and politically challenging this class of predators. And it's in that vein, actually, that my organization, my members are quite excited about the need for organizations such as the Coalition for Revolution, which seeks to galvanize the collective anger of our people at all levels to the crisis at hand. Even in the trade unions, people also begin to discover, fight and get minimum wage, and that these people will not even implement it. You know, and it's so sad that even though the minimum wage in real terms is much more less than the minimum wage we had in 1998, but they are refusing to even implement it as poor as it is. So it is important to increasingly draw people to that conclusion that we have to confront the predators. We have to challenge the power base. We have to do more political organizing. And it's only within that context that we can also meaningfully, independently, with our own political organization, intervene in the electoral process in a more organized way. Otherwise, like Baba said, like some of our friends have done, you can enter any of the parties, and rather than getting the parties to do what we want, to actually respect the programs and demands and agitation of the working people, rather you get yourself involved, become like you said, become one of the thieving monkeys. So we must independently politically organize. We believe that the Coalition for Revolution is a bold attempt in this realm, which all of us should work with, so that we can actually get into our people back into the historical motion of reclaiming back their destiny from the hands of our ruling elite. So mine is just, we come in that form of intervention rather than a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Benga. Comrade Benga is General Secretary of the Federation of Informal Workers Organization of Nigeria and co-convener of the Coalition for Revolution Corps. Next will be Felix Adjola, followed by Esther Oluyide. Felix Adjola,
okay.
Followed by Esther Oluyide.
Thank you, sir. I just want to state...
Out of the sir, it's Comrade. Thank you.
All right, sir. I just want to say that while it has been much emphasized about the grassroots mobilization, I want to probably state that it is also very, very pertinent to probably work in the direction, mobilize particularly the trade unions. Although the trade union seems to have been greatly infiltrated by unscrupulous men who have taken advantage of the platform for personal aggrandizement. But I still believe that revolutions are not made by the peasants, because the peasants inherently are gullible and redundant populations. But revolutions are made by the working class, whose expectations are not met by the political systems where they live. And a good platform for that are the trade unions, which I believe we need to actually galvanize together, of course, conscientize. They've got to be conscientized, and we've got to mobilize them No, it was Wogu and Nanaba who argued that the socio-economic condition of every society depends extremely, on the existence and the operation of the trade union, the ASU, the NLC, the TL, all of the civil rights movement. They've got to be properly conscientized for this mobilization. It is from this level that it could trickle down to the grassroots, the mechanics, the informal associations, and all of that. So I think while we work, in building the consciousness among the peasants, among the poor, it is very, very extremely significant to mobilize and conscientize the various trade unions. ASU seems to be the lone fighter against this, thieving political class in Nigeria. It appears to me that all the other NLC is actually dormant. Apology. ASU seems to be the only organization speaking, which actually is not. So it is very, very germane that we radically conscientize and mobilize these trade unions to. It is from there we can make substantial progress in the struggle for this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Felix. Comrade Esther. Comrade Esther Mama Luta from Ibadan. Where are you? We can see Comrade Esther Oluyide. Temitope Fagunwa Maberu. Tope Fagunwa. Are you still there?
Very
Your
much.
hand is raised. All right.
Yes, comrade. Greetings, comrades. It has been an interesting discussion. Let me personally thank our professor, Professor Olurede, for the political education. Prof has been amazing. It has been by our side, even as
Comrade Maberu, your saxophone is touching the microphone.
Add to the ongoing conversation raised, especially by Comrade Esther, in regards to the current state of our women and also the current state of our youth, is extremely important. And it is also an issue that we cannot afford to treat with levity. I see that Babaye reacted to the discussion around women and all of that, and I mean on the question of women, and I think that even at this time, there is a necessity for us to understand that there is a conscious attempt, by the capitalist system upon which this country is being operated on, to keep our women, on silence. And this attempt is also similar to the state's, tactics to ensure that the minds of the youth are also kept, away from any revolutionary, struggle in respect of whatever form it might be. It is not new that the state, for instance, subsidize backward guys, so-called musicians, subsidize the activities so much so that our youth have access to them, so that it has become literally possible for them to distract their attention through whatever means. You have this Big Brother, something, TV shows and what have you. So making it impossible for them to even reason or to even think that the current, society upon which they are living in is such a backward one that we do not even have time for all of these, frivolous activities. So it is something that we must be able to connect. We must be able to connect the fact that our youth are currently, being held down, by the state, systematic apparatus, and also our women are being kept down because it is important for the state to lubricate its existence by, by keeping them, under their current situation for which they find themselves. So I'm saying that if we're going to have to address the question of the liberation of our women, and also the question of the silence upon which our youth are currently on down, the existing economic system, which is the question of capitalism, how it operates, and also the role that we as revolutionaries, as members of CLO, members of radical organizations, members of trade unions, the roles upon which we must play in destroying this system is also fundamental for us in order for us to be able to educate ourselves and also come down together, because at this time, many of us, we are talking about the need for a coalition. And I could see also that more than what it used to be, organizations at this time are willing, to give, enormous support towards the formation of coalitions. I want to say that beyond this motive, beyond this, urge, to build these coalitions, it will also be important for us to test our, our commitment on the field, and which is why August 5th to me, remains symbolic, for organizations, like-minded organizations who are, apparently, educating their members about this backward system, to test run the ability of their members and also their organizations on the street, to join the demonstration regardless of whatever state they are located in, be it Abuja, be it Port Harcourt, be it Lagos, because there is also this whole thing around our numbers. No matter how much you talk about it, the states would become, more fearful of us if we come out en masse, and say to them that all of this injustice, upon which they
Hello, Mabel, are you still there? I think we've lost him. Could we have Eniola Adewale? Eniola Adewale?
Yeah, good afternoon, comrades. Revolutionary greetings to you, Babae, and the co-conveners, and the soul life of our professors. So my whole little contribution is this. I want to ask, what's the role the TUC, NLC are playing concerning the private sectors? For instance, we say they are fighting for the working class. At the private sector, they are being marginalized. They are not in unity. And with these, the political captors, the predators, they are passing through them to continue to oppress the masses, the people. We've been shouting, okay, revolution. Now, what role do they play? Then in the 80s, we know that they are active when it comes to the struggle. But those we have here now, are they not opportunists? How can we match them together to bring them into the system so that the fight by the oppressed can be won? But day and night, when the oppressed, when the few of them just come on board to challenge the status quo, they are still using this so-called, the NLCT uses the elite to oppress the oppressed, in which is supposed not to be. Are they serving the interest of the people, or they are serving their pockets? Because this is one of the things I want the leaders to also look into. Someone said the ASU has been the one on the track fighting. ASU is not fighting for the common man. They are fighting for their own self, not for the rest. Since the antecedent of IPP or high head issue, that is when you've been hearing them louding. Now, when everything comes and now, did you hear anything from them again? When they said they should come and resume, they are receiving salary. Do they ever stand and ask for the rights of the people in the private sector? No. You are talking of minimum wages in some private institution now. in some private businesses now, none of their workers are receiving the minimum wage. And how do you want this set of people to enjoy the institution? Or are they not part of the institution? So we need to allow, and the professors and other leaders in the house need to speak on this so that we get a little enlightenment on them. The second question is this. Now, as we are clamoring that we need a teacher to preach the evangelization of the freedom, where are the teachers? Are they ready to teach? Because at times in the institution, the message they preach to students now is message of fear, of cowardice. Are we still going to remain in these settings till, or we are going to tackle the settings? So they need to enlighten us on this so that we, the students, both within and outside the system, we need to know where we need to brush up to make sure we challenge the status quo so that the vision, the dream, the freedom we want can be realistic. So I rest my case there. They should answer. Sir.
All right. Thank you, Eniola. Thank you. I'm sorry. I would also have to please, especially I'm encouraging instead of stating it as a rule now, since although we stated it earlier, I didn't emphasize. We are far behind. I'm even appreciate the fact that we still have this number after well over an hour and 15 minutes after we started. So, but now we have Pan-African, Orodu Kelu, Abisoyi Israel, and Badari with hands raised. So, and then Shola Olorunfemi has come in. Please try to keep it brief and straight to the point. We are sorry that we have to try to stress this with you now, but please, you can note the time. Pan-African followed by Orodu Kelu.
Hi. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, yeah. Good day, everyone. Thanks for the really good discussion. I just wanted to ask about plans to connect with religious group, because obviously, as we know in Nigeria, religion is very, very important, and we have historical examples of like the Haitian revolution, and even in South America, a lot of their leftist and socialist movements are informed by Christian liberation theology, which is like for the workers and the poor, and yes, I just wanted to ask about plans to connect with religious groups like that, and even like the Islamic the movement. I think they shared they are very anti-imperialist, they're anti-American, anti-Zionist. So plans to connect with positive religious groups like that. And obviously, I know that a lot of the religious groups in Nigeria are right now, they're reactionary. They're just focus on prosperity gospel and stealing people's money and stuff like that. But obviously, I'm sure there are still progressive groups in Nigeria that we can connect to. Thank you.
Thank you for that short, succinct, and straight to the point comment and question. Orodu Kelu? Orodu Kelu, are you there? Orodu Kelu? If he's not there, we could come to Abisoye Israel. Abisoye Israel. Abisoye Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, the comrades. I really enjoyed the program, and I thank God for the life of the covenants that produced the program. My little advice to the house is about our leaders. I want to appeal to them. They should be like Nehemiah. Prophet Nehemiah was a rebuilder. We are out to rebuild the country. They should not look back. They should have it in mind that people like Tobias, Tabalati will be there. People to deceive them, even among our followers. So they should be prayerful. They should be bold enough to do what is right to do at the right time. Because we, the followers, we are looking at them in the front. And I pray God will help them. Besides that, I want to appeal to the organizers. like the last person that contributed to this thing. I have to appreciate the Comrade Commander very well because he has been so bold and been doing the work for the informal workers, the grassroots. Let these organizers try as much as possible to look for some organization on the specialization area, because all of us cannot be dealing with informal workers. Like other can be on religious aspects. So that when we have the classification division of this thing, it will the sensitization and the orientation will go deep, and then we will move forward. Thank you for your contribution, and I pray that we shall have a cause to glorify God after our own struggle. And the Lord, you can have our effort in Jesus' name. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Comrade Abioye. Now, Shola Olorunfemi and Grace. Is it all of you still there?
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the organizer of the program, and I want to quickly align myself with all the positions of the panelists, on moving beyond the theories, aligning ourselves completely with the core to practicalize action on the field. I want to draw attention to the very short statement of our comrade Obayuana. Dr. Obayuana talked about law. I want to say that the present situation we have in the country in the last 5 years, the ruling class created law, and now I want to without any fear of contradiction. Hello. I want to say without any fear of contradiction that the masses have been able to be consciously, they are very conscious of their situation, unlike about 2-3 years ago. Now, with the impact of the COVID-19, they have been able to see the ruling elites have been exposed. They don't have any welfare place for them. So, we have to what's going to happen by making all the necessary tools ready, leafleteering, to sensitize the public and everything like that. We have seen situations in the past, even during the military, when they have guns and everything like that on the streets. Few students, move the masses into action, by starting maybe in the background or or in the east. So it's very germane for us to test our capability, because what we are having in Nigeria currently is repression. The ruling class are deliberately repressing us. Having brought out the leadership of the mass movement in terms of the trade unions, what we have in the trade unions now, we have the enlightened leadership who are consciously doing what they are doing, and we have the followership who don't know anything. They have mess them up completely. They are not even in law, but because of the movement has turned, the labor movement has turned to a complete bureaucracy. By even the followers, they are enjoying the little from they are enjoying. It's okay for them, not to fight, not to do anything. So we really need to move the masses into action, because by the time we give them slogan, before you know it, they start buying to it, and it's very easy for the masses to shift their opinion anytime. So we cannot totally say that we are losing hope on the labor movement. I worked in the labor movement in the last 7 years, and I know practically that within the TUC and the NLC, they silence a lot of revolutionary progression that would have been, and it's very, very obvious that, all the pays the piper call the things. So they don't want to do anything for because some of them, they are taking grants running into billions, which they cannot pay, and which government have evidence that they can use against them anytime. So it is high time for us to take our destiny in our hands. We don't need to wait for anything. Shying away from what we already doing. But now we need to mobilize the people, because they represent that we are in law. We are not in law again. People are conscious of what is happening to them. Let us move to country. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Shola. I'll now call on each of our three panelists to respond. Before doing that, I want to apologize with regards to our not being able to have Comrade Showore on. Yeah, it was my fault. Well, it was a mistake of the head, not of the heart. There was a chiffon, I think the name was next to Ease. I muted him 4 times. Each time he would unmute himself and still be kind of blocking either consciously or unconsciously. So I think that was the one I was trying to remove. I might inadvertently have removed Showore. All efforts to troubleshoot that, including removing security accesses to the Zoom room, somehow didn't work. But now we have spent like an hour and a half over the time. I want to commend everyone that has stayed. We still have about 40 people, and I know that out of the over 20 people that have left, a number are organizers for the August 5th protest of the Revolution Now campaign. And in several states across the country, there are activities already lined up for mobilization towards that, which they had to leave to attend to. So without much ado, I will take a few brief words in closing remarks from our 3 panelists, starting from Comrade Osage, and then Comrade Esther, and Comrade Olorode. And I know Comrade Olorode would want to also respond to any last take on ASU, which I found a bit questionable.
Yeah, hello, comrade.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm actually already on my way on the trip, but I want to say that I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I urge comrades to keep the faith and forward onwards to the revolution in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Osage.
Yeah.
Comrade Esther?
Yes, as we all rise to embrace the change that is coming, it's good that we consistently relearn what we learned. Much as we want to sit, empathize, and struggle with people, we really cannot do more than we know. The more we know, the better we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Esther. The people's pedagogue, Comrade Prof. Emeritus.
Thank you, Comrade.
Everybody,
thank Baba Ye, Comrade Esther, Banyuana, for this great opportunity. I just want to reiterate that we have a lot to learn. We also have a lot to teach our people. And most learning and teaching are best achieved in action, in defending a cause and in organization. I have had the comment on NLC. And again, if we look at the history of the labor movement, we will understand the limitations of NLC. NLC was not really set up to be a very cohesive organization, the kind of thing that we expect it to be. But over time, people have struggled to create some cohesion. NLC is a federation. Any union can move out if it wants. And so there are a lot of limitations. And I think we shouldn't just dismiss NLC until you see. There are things they have limitations, but there are things they can contribute. You see, as for ASU, it's the same story. Really, I think people need to find out what's exactly going on instead of just jumping at conclusions. I know for a fact that the most important issue on ASU's agenda in this crisis itself is how universities are going to survive. The IPs thing, if IPs was on when we were sacked several times in the 80s and 90s, we will have no job. It is precisely because universities had autonomy that we were able to defend ourselves and take our job back when we were sacked. And 2, The most important things on ASU agenda is funding of the university system and ASU's ideological opposition to payment of school fees. You can check this with anybody. We have ASU documents. If you go to Unilag, our comrades there will give you the documents of our negotiation about what the issues are. Of course, lecturers have to be paid appropriately. I mean, look, only teachers, only university people can go to Ghana and say, I'm a professor in Nigeria, I want to be a professor at the University of Legon. Or go to University of London and say, I'm a professor in Nigeria, I want to be paid a professor's salary. A Nigerian general or permanent secretary cannot go to England and say, I want to be a general in English army. So precisely because the job of academics are international jobs, there is some reasonable pay that should be made so that we can retain people. The reason we are able to get many of our people to come back after the mass exodus of intellectuals in the 80s and 90s is that we were able to improve our salary. So these are some of the issues. So I think we need to make effort to find out what the facts are. Every organization, even the student movement, they have limitations today. They are under a lot of siege. So we need to enhance capacity of these organizations individually so that we can collectively defend our country and our peoples. Thank you very, very, very much for being here and for being always there. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Comrade Prof. Very quickly to round up, I'll just speak very quickly to one or two things. Even though Comrade Prof said it, I mean, that it is legitimate for lecturers to fight for their wages, but I also think that that still does not do justice to what the ASU has been doing. Incidentally, my bachelor's in industrial relations degree thesis was on the history of ASU strikes. And I noticed that from 1973, when you had the first strike, that was under the National University, National Association of University Teachers.
Yes.
There had always been three things. One, improved wages. Two, improvement of funding for education as a whole. So that is not even just about the lecturers. And three, for university autonomy. So the thing is, the fight for wages is legitimate, but the fight for education for as a right, which even Nancy used to stress, is something that the lecturers union should be commended for. Secondly, on the issue of mobilizing TUC NLC, I mean, I must point out first and foremost that the core as of now does not in any way underrate trade unions. Incidentally, the two co-conveners of CORE are trade unionists of over 2 decades standing. Komegbenga Komolafe is General Secretary of FIUMA. Before then, he had worked as the research officer of the Trade Union Congress, TUC, at the time it became TUC in year 2000. After that, he worked with the American Center for International Labor Solidarity, a well-paying job he left to be on the field to organize informal workers. I've worked at all levels of the trade union also for well over 20 years. So we appreciate the dynamics, the strength, the weaknesses, and we respect the trade unions. But it's also important to stress, and I have seen this quite often, people conflate trade union and working class. The working class is a larger category which includes even the trade union. You're talking of trade union bureaucracy, the leadership, and the trade union rank and file. It is not accidental. It is not accidental that our first webinar, which was 2 weeks back, every of the 4 speakers were trade unionists. They were not what you say national leaders, but they were trade unionists. They included a leader of the nurses that had been, organizer in the state and a gender desk officer. They included a branch chair of the Nigerian Union of Teachers. They included the chair of the newly established National Association of Private Secondary School Teachers. So you see, and then of course they included FIUMA General Secretary and co-convener, Komegbenga Komolafe. So we prioritize that. We prioritize the rank and file worker without in any way shaking respect for the national leadership of the trade unions, which, for example, even regarding this action, we have reached out to. We don't expect that if they join, fine, but as Commodore already has pointed out, there are also the nature of the trade union body, because it cannot always be consistently revolutionary and still be able to carry out collective bargaining. So there are structural issues, there are also material issues, there are a number of things involved. But CORE sees the liberation of the working masses as primary. It is the masses, it is the working class people that can liberate themselves, not us. At best, we are catalysts. And that is also why one of the things we are doing on the 5th of August, along with marching on the street, is issuing the core charter for the masses liberation. We're not saying we have all the answer, but we are putting it there, demands for the masses liberation, working masses. So, and just finally, it might seem a little thing, but it is also not unimportant, because we think and we talk with language. So anytime this arises, I try to point out. I notice, my very good friend and colleague, Mabel, talking of our women, our youth. I think it is important to stress that nobody is our women. Women are women. I know it is not a conscious thing, but we think and we talk with words. It's important. There's a sense of patronage to it. While we might not intend to, this kind of language might, entrench the patriarchal thinking. It's not our women. They are not, every woman is a woman now, right? She's our woman. Every woman is our woman, not our women. Just as we are not their men. We have every person. We have that autonomy, and then as a class together we fight and win. So we want to thank you all very much. We'll be running our webinar series regularly, but more importantly, because this Zoom thing also has a way of leaving people in the stratosphere, we are ants on the ground coalition. Our people are, some of those we have left, well over 20. They are across different states of the Federation. People are mobilizing, even as we speak, towards the 5th of August action. So we'll be inviting you wherever you are. You can join the 5th of August protest, and any and every action that we carry on, would appreciate that. Also, we'll be carrying out educational series beyond the webinar, symposiums, reaching out to communities, just as people are doing as we speak now, because enlightenment is essential, organizing is central, and breaking the bonds through revolution is what all this will add up to as we march forward together. Thank you all immensely. We have spent 1 hour 37 minutes beyond the earlier projected time, that we still have you all here with this discussion. It's something we very much appreciate. We look forward to seeing you on the field. We look forward to our struggle together for liberating Nigeria, for the self-emancipation by the working class people of themselves, to bring to birth a new world on the ashes of the obdurate, of the decadent system of capitalism, of profit over people. We will win. The people united and determined cannot be defeated. Thank you very much, and goodbye.